All right. Well, I think this may be the finale on the whole Masterbuilt Gravity series thing that I've been dealing with. And for anybody who hasn't followed along, bought a Masterbuilt Gravity XT at the very end of January. Only got like a couple of uses out of it before I started having issues with the probing system and the consistency of the machine and it being able to maintain temperatures. And so been fighting that for months, going back and forth with customer service. Now, where it last left off, I was still waiting on an updated probe because they had been out of stock and they told me it was going to be June before I was going to get a probe. So whenever I got back from vacation this summer, I did have a probe waiting on me. And so in this video, that's where we're going to pick it up, where I am installing the probe and seeing how the controller and the system works with a brand new probe from Masterbuilt. Today I gotta replace some parts. So they've finally gotten me a new probe because I've been having probe problems. They also sent me an air intake flap that I gotta replace, and I've been looking to see like what all I gotta do, and they sent me instructions except for, man, Masterbuilt just, they cannot get it right. They sent me the wrong instructions for this thing. So you can see this is called a shutdown slide kit. That's the instructions. And this is actually to replace the flaps here that are controlled by the handle, right? And so the thing is that's not the part that they sent me that they told me needs to be replaced. This flap isn't back here. This flap is up here, right? So they didn't even send me the right instructions. So first, the probe isn't going to be too bad. I've just got to get in here into the back and couple of screws hold that thing on, and then I can take it out. So that won't be too bad. So here's looking in to the flap that I got to replace. I'm guessing what this flap does is it keeps maybe too much air from drafting, and so maybe they thought that this was damaged. I don't really see any damage. Now, in all of this, one thing I really don't care for, and I'll try to show you in here, that probe line, so there, let me see if I can get in here on it. You can see it's that yellow cord, and it's got to have like a bend because the way these things connect, there you go. So one side or the other like has to be kinked. That's not real good because you put that hard kink in those wires. They're kind of fragile. So anyway, it's all back together now. All right, and so let me get all my tools cleared out of the way, and then we'll do a little test and see did that make any dang difference at all. You can't make this stuff up, man. Yeah, nothing. And I was worried maybe the controller's dead. I started checking stuff. Let me unplug this. The power supply's dead. Nothing. 12-volt power supply was unplugged, as again you saw whenever I started working on this thing. It wasn't plugged in. It hadn't been plugged in. So it does say for outdoor use, indoor and outdoor use. So, you know, leaving it unplugged outside shouldn't be a problem. So again, I know there's always the question, should this thing be left outside? But that's literally what this thing is for, right? I mean, it's supposed to sit outside. Yeah, it looks like maybe the seal failed. So maybe it somehow got rain up in here, even though it wasn't on the ground. It was sitting on that platform, which is a good, you know, 5-6 inches off the ground. So it's not like it's sitting in anything. Looks like maybe some water got up in here. And so, yeah, this thing dead. All right, so just because I know user error is always a consideration, this is how I usually store this thing, and it is under the overhang of my house here. And so the cable, the cord, you can see where it was coiled up, so it's sitting on that. And again, that is not on the ground. It is not totally uncovered. It's underneath the smoker. It's underneath the overhang of the roof, and it was not plugged in. And so, you know, again, all I can figure is some water ingress. So I'm going to wait for it to dry out. I'll see if that does anything, but all I can figure is, like I said, it just, the seals just must not be very good because it's not like it was in standing water or anything. Yeah, what a bummer. So I'll roll overlay in. If it tests okay, of course, I'll come back out and we'll do this thing. But otherwise, that might have to wait for a part 2, because if it won't come back, then I'm going to have to wait for a new power supply. Good times.
3 days later.
Went on Amazon, bought a new power supply. It turns out to be exactly the same, so I was able to use their cord, so I didn't have to worry about adapters or anything. All right, so I've got it warming up, and I'm gonna move it to 225 because that's, you know, the most important temperature, the low and slow kind of temperature. So we'll see whether it can get up and hold that or whether it overshoots. So the probes I have tried to get as close as possible. Show you there in the back. You can see I have the probes set like right beside each other. So the readout here should be pretty accurate on like what's going on in there. So with that, we'll see what happens when it warms up. Currently sitting at about 100, and yeah, so it's on its way. Once I get it fired up, we can maybe look at what it's doing. Okie dokie. Yeah, so I don't know. New probe doesn't seem to be working out real good on this first test. Being is that the Fireboard says we're at 240 and the Masterbuilt says we are at 170. So yeah, I don't know, man. They sent me another controller, but you know, I tried to hook it up and it wouldn't connect to the Wi-Fi. And so I went back to the original controller and it's showing stupid temperatures. So, dude, I don't even know at this point. I don't know what to do with this thing. All right, so it's actually been a few days now because after the first one, I thought I would try some other stuff. I replaced the controller with the other one they had sent me. This one I was able to get it connected to my Wi-Fi and get it connected to my phone, and so I was able to update to the newest firmware. It still didn't work great, and so I contacted support. I'd actually already contacted them. They responded and told me that if I looked on the new probe that they sent me, there was actually a little insulator on the end of the probe that I needed to remove. Now, I didn't get any instructions with it, or if they did, I don't know where they went, but so I didn't know, and I'd left that on, and I thought, well, okay, maybe that's insulating the new probe, and that's why it's reading so low. And here we are. So I've got that off, and I'm testing again. Now, it is doing a little better this time than the last time, but it's 50 degrees off, and it looks like even with the new firmware and stuff, they're still kind of lying about the temperature stability on this thing. Because if you look at get this thing twisted. If you look at the Fireboard app, you can see a lot of variation in the temperature, and I mean it's up 280, 290 here a lot of the time. Whereas in the Masterbuilt app, you can see it's, 225, holding steady, no problem, right? Varying a few degrees. Yeah, so I'll see like what happens at higher temp, but yeah, it looks like there's still quite a bit of error. So anyway, just so people understand, I've got these probes right up next to each other, so there shouldn't be 50 degrees of difference between probes that are within an inch of each other back there. So we'll see once this thing ramps up whether it's any tighter to the actual temperature, because I do trust the Fireboard. I've verified with a laser thermometer too, so it seems to be pretty good, whereas the Masterbuilt it's just reading way off. All right, well, the answer seems to be clearly no. As I crank the temperature, the thing it heats up real quick, and the temperature, man, it jumped way up there. But yeah, the probe on the Masterbuilt still saying not that hot, so I'm gonna stop because I don't want to burn anything up in there or melt anything. So yeah, I don't know. I'll get back with their customer support and we'll see what happens. Now, where it went then, had to go back and forth with Masterbuilt multiple times trying to sort out various problems. And basically what they told me at first was that I'm spot checking the system with my Fireboard and its probe, and that is a one spot check of temperature. And they said that the Masterbuilt probe system and the controller is all calibrated to the total internal temperature of the gravity system. And so it's a spot check, but then it's calibrated to reflect the overall temperature because you can have different hot spots and stuff like that. And so they were concerned that I had my probe set in a hot spot and that was causing the issues. Now, I don't think that was the problem, but they did request that I do another test where I place probes in multiple places around the internal area of the smoker. And so I started off trying to do that, and I put in a couple of probes. And so I used the regular Fireboard probe that it comes with, and then not my smartest moment, but I used a fluke meter with a thermocouple, and it's only rated to like 500 degrees, but I thought, well, I'm only getting this thing up to like 350, so that shouldn't be too big of a problem, except for the smoker kind of lost control of itself. The controller, the temperature started going up. I started seeing a big temperature differential, and then the Masterbuilt controller seemed to just kind of lose it, and it thought the temperature was falling, and so it was ramping the fan up, and the actual temperatures inside just shot through the roof. All right, so we reached a point where I'm going to have to stop this, but I know you wanted to see it. The readout saying 253. The probe at the back is saying 600. I've got a Type K thermocouple in the middle. It's saying 595. And the actual problem is that something has failed in the Masterbuilt controller because it was over 300, and I'll include a screen cap of that. And it's now dropped and seems to just not be working. But you can see the smoke billowing off of this thing. And man, this thing is hot. Yeah, it is like absolutely crazy. I can't even stand next to it hardly. It's so hot in there. 'Cause again, it's like 600 degrees in the middle. So I've got that again probed in 2 locations, but again, it's not going to hit 350. It's actually gotten so hot it's started to melt the Teflon on the outside of this probe over here. So yeah, I've got to stop. Both the thermocouple on the fluke meter and the Fireboard both agreed within like 5 to 10 degrees of each other. So it wasn't a hotspot scenario. The temperatures truly got up to like 600 degrees inside, so bad that it actually melted the thermocouple lead on that fluke probe. And like I said, that probe wasn't meant for that. It's accurate, but it doesn't have any shielding or anything, and so it ruined that probe. That probe's like $50, so that sucked. But that was on me. I just shouldn't have used that type of probe inside of a smoker. Anyway, so that then kind of led me to believe, look, this is not any kind of a hotspot situation. The controller literally just doesn't work right. And so went back to customer service. They actually requested that I run another test where I let just the controller work, because maybe it's some sort of time thing, and maybe it was just, reading the ramp up. I don't know. I mean, I kind of got frustrated with them because, again, in the back and forth, it really made me feel like they didn't think I knew what I was doing, and they thought that, oh, well, he's measuring maybe the temperature shooting out of the manifold, and that wasn't really reflective of the overall temperature because the heat coming out of the manifold's really hot, and if you put the probe over that heat flow, it's going to measure way higher than the rest of the interior, and it potentially just a miscommunication between us. But anyway, I tried to point out to him, look, I know you want me to run another test, but like the controller thought the temperature was falling, and the temperature was up to 600 degrees in multiple places. That's not, I can't get the thing to read 400 degrees. It thought the temperature was 200 and something. So if I actually like let the thing keep running, there's no indication that the temperature on the controller on the Masterbuilt would ever rise, because again, it's showing the temperature dropping while the actual measured temperature on multiple other systems is going up. So I basically just refused. I just like, I've gone through over 100 pounds of charcoal on this thing. I've been dealing with it since February. right? Because again, I bought this thing at the very end of January. I've gotten exactly 2 cooks out of this system that haven't had a problem. I'm not running more tests. I've done multiple tests. I've given people, I've given them tons of feedback. And the bottom line is I'm not a beta tester, right? Like, I'm not here to sort out the problems. I've replaced probes. I've replaced controllers. They sent me a new little flap because maybe the intake flap wasn't very good at restricting airflow. So I did that. I've gone back and forth with them for months. They left me with a smoker that wasn't working for months, and here it is July. And so at that point, we just agreed they are going to refund me for the machine. And that's kind of where it's at now. I'm waiting. The check's supposed to be here this week. I'm assuming that it's coming. They told me it is, and I have no reason to doubt them. My overall interactions with their customer service are the people themselves. I have very little complaints with. I try to be very civil with them because I really do feel like, there's some issues, I think, with the electronics in the Masterbuilt Gravity. I've seen a lot of people having issues with temperature overshoot and fluctuation and that sort of thing, the readings being off. I feel like the customer service people are a bit of a victim of the approach the company took with the machine. Again, just my opinion, but it looks like they outsourced their electronics and maybe the vendor that supplied that didn't do a good job, and now they're having to deal with a lot of that stuff. Now, that is Masterbuilt's choice, but it's not the customer service people's fault, and there's probably only so much that they can do. With that, there were times where I felt like they were really trying to pin the problems on me and something I was doing, and oh, you've got your probes in the wrong spot. They asked me, like, what type of charcoal are you using? Various other things. It's like, oh, even from the first, oh, well, you shouldn't use it in the rain. And there's just all these different things that at times it felt like they were trying to make this my fault, even though, again, I did everything they asked. I followed the manual. There was just, again, you look at other people's videos, there's some issues here. So with that, supposed to be getting a refund. I've started trying to use my Fireboard because it has the ability to control the fan through the external cable. So I've been working with that, and that seems to work pretty good. I'm going to run a little demo today on doing a cook, but my first demo with that is it's extremely accurate and seems to work really, really well. All right, well, the fun never ends. So here's what we're going to try today. As you can see, controller's gone. Masterbuilt is apparently processing a refund, but they wanted all their electronics back. So probe, controller, 12-volt adapter, all that stuff is gone, and I have been left with just the mechanical smoker. And so I'm going to see if I can get this thing working with the Fireboards. So these Fireboards have the built-in capability through this little port here that we can hook up a little adapter and run a fan off this thing. I've never used it before, but I did spend the money and I bought the adapter cable. So this, it's got a 12-volt input and a fan outlet, and so this talks to the controller, and I'm sure there's probably like a MOSFET or something control where it can do like a PWM signal and control the fan. Now, the fan on the Masterbuilt, for those that care, so you can see there's a little cable down here. Now, this uses a JST PH connector, and it just so happens that I actually had that connector kit because I'd used these same connectors years ago on a CNC project that I built back before I had a YouTube channel. So I actually can connect into this thing, and then I just wired it onto the appropriate barrel jack. And so we're gonna fire this thing up and see if the Fireboard will control it. All right, so on this thing, you'll be able to see there's a little fan down here now. It says aux, so it's getting power input. And now I can set up the fan in the app. Okay, and so now in the app up here, it gives me drive commands. And so let's see if I can make this thing work. Okay, and so it adds a little chart on there. You can see that green. And sure enough, I can hear a fan running. So let me go get this smoker started, and we'll see if we can get this thing up to temp. All right, well, sure enough, it is indeed working. Now, I'm having a bit of struggle because currently it's got the fan off and the temperature is just ever so slightly creeping up. But now let me show you how it's working. Essentially, it'll plot out the temperature in the fan control so you can kind of see everything that's happening. It's kind of stair-stepped its way up. And like I said, it's currently, you know, 232, 233 and rising, and the fan's been off. So that means it's just drafting this machine. It is hard to keep it at 225. I've noticed that before. Even with the fan off, I'd see the temperature rise on this thing. So I'm gonna close this damper a little, and we'll see if adding a bit of air constriction helps this thing settle in. But it didn't overshoot too much. It actually stopped and was holding at about 230 there for a bit before it started going up. So, you know, five degrees over is way better than the Masterbuilt controller. So if I can get this thing stoppered down to where it won't draft quite so bad, let me see if I just open that just a touch. Maybe that'll help, and we'll see if it can settle in at 225, and if it can, then I'll run it up to 350 and see how it does. All right, so indeed, that's all it took. Just needed it stopped down a little bit, and there you can see it's 224, and it's been bouncing around anywhere from 223 to 227, which is, you know, plus minus 2 degrees. It is it's doing a pretty dang good job. I'll again try to overlay the chart because, you know, if I show you on my phone, you're not going to be able to see it very well, but you can see she's pretty flat. So yeah, you got to make sure that that vent stopped down enough to where the fan has to blow to keep the temp. That way it can exert control over everything. So next stage, I'm going to open this thing up and bring it up to about 350 and see how it does at a higher temp. I have no doubt that it'll be good. Oh, by the way, just in case anybody cares, the peak overshoot, right, because I got it set at 225, it got up to something like 233. So it never, you know, got more than 8 degrees above my set point. It'll probably overshoot a little more at 350, I would guess. And I can hear the fan blowing now. All right, so other piece of information people might want to know: from light to 225 only took about 10 minutes. And then it finally settled in after about 20 minutes. So yeah, it gets up to 225 real quick. We'll see how long it takes to get up to 350. Okay, yeah, at 350, it holds dead steady. And I think that's mostly because it needs more fan at the higher temperature. And so since it can use more fan, it can really find a good steady state. It did overshoot just a touch. I think at the peak, it hit, let's see, what did we get up to? Like 360, low 360s maybe. Not too bad at all for overshoot. So Fireboard seems to be a great system. Now it does cost more. You know, this is, you know, you're looking at $200-300 for the Fireboard, and then another $80 for the cable. You got to have a 12-volt power supply for it. You know, now if you've got a Masterbuilt, you're ever thinking of doing this, you can use the Masterbuilt power supply. So that 12-volt power supply would work, but then you're going to have a cable to hook in to the fan, and so I was able to do that pretty easily because I just had the stuff on hand to do it. But you know, it is what it is. Seems to work really well, and I'm happy with that. So at least it's working, and I got a way to use this thing at this point. Lord knows the Masterbuilt controller never got me there. It's odd because I have been left with the hardware of the smoker, even though I've had to mail all the electronics back to Masterbuilt. I've still actually got the smoker enclosure and the fan and stuff, so I'm going to try to use it just to see if I can salvage it, because I literally don't know what else I would do with it other than just throw it away. And if I did that, the chances of that actually hitting the dumpster are pretty low, because somebody's just going to drive by and pick this thing up. So that's kind of where I'm at now, and it feels a little awkward that I'm using it, given that they're refunding me. But again, they asked for the electronics. They didn't send me a label or anything to send the smoker back. So I'm going to try to use it again, just because I don't want to just waste it and throw it away or something like that. But with that, I think that's going to be the end of the Masterbuilt Gravity for me. I at this point, I just wouldn't recommend people buy them, because I have seen mine had too many problems, and I have seen other people having a lot of issues with the controller. I know there's a gentleman that has a kind of smoking focus channel that's even like showing, hey, if you take the probe, it's got the shielding around it. If you bend that up, maybe that will help. But I mean, again, that's kind of where it's at, that people who are using these are trying to modify them to get them to work because there's some problems with their control system. Anyway, my experience has not been the best with this. I am glad to be off the hook. I'm glad to be getting a refund with the potential that even if I can't get this thing salvaged, I can go buy a smoker that works. I don't know where I'll go if that happens. Again, I'm hoping the Fireboard system just works, and so far it looks like the Fireboard system may just work. Anyway, I feel like this video has probably ended up way longer than I wanted it to be, but I did want to share that kind of outcome with you guys because I know I've made a few videos on this, and my first video got a pretty decent viewership with people that are interested in these, and it's important, I think, for you to see the reality of negative experiences, because I know that there's a lot of videos from people potentially who may have gotten these things given to them, and whenever you're reviewing something that's been sent to you, you have some incentives to give the manufacturer lots of good feedback, and you don't want to be super critical because they have been kind enough to share their equipment with you. And often you will not be as harsh in your criticisms because you want to maintain a good relationship with that manufacturer. I don't care about maintaining that relationship with the manufacturer because, well, I just bought this thing. So my feedback is you have got to get these electronics fixed. There's a lot of people paying a lot of money for these things. It's not a cheap smoker, and there is no reason to cheap out on the electronics and to not have that thing working well. The Fireboard system, a third-party controller, this thing cost, yeah, $200-300, but it looks like it's able to control the temperatures on something that it has not been tested with, right? This thing has not been developed for this particular smoker, and it looks like it's able to maintain temperatures on that thing using Masterbuilt's fan within 5 degrees. So you can't tell me that for way less money, you should be able to build something specifically designed for that smoker that maintains the temperatures way better. You would think, right? You'd think you could get just as much accuracy off of the in-house controller, given that how much like testing you can do with that specific machine and electronics combination. To have a third-party controller put in, and the first time you put that thing in without any calibration, it gets the temperature right on to the degree and maintains it within 2 or 3 degrees. I mean, let's face it, that's a little embarrassing, right? I mean, to me, if I were Masterbuilt, I'd be really critical of whoever is doing the control system software and firmware for this smoker. There is no reason for it not to work better than this. So that's my feedback. It's just, you got to get this stuff hammered out. You've got to get better firmware, or you've got to go with a different supplier or vendor for your electronics and control systems. So with that, I'll wrap this video up, and then I'm gonna go eat some barbecue because I think maybe I've got a working smoker now. So if you've got any comments, suggestions, feedback, feel free to leave them down below, and I hope that your experiences are much better than mine have been if you have bought this smoker. If not, maybe think about this stuff whenever you're out there shopping. So appreciate your time as always. Thanks.